John Greaves, and this is Brad Martin, the leader of SOMA, a missional community in Bartow County, Georgia. One of our goals as SOMA is to minister to people who may have not had the opportunity to interact on a meaningful level with followers of Christ. And so if people have questions that they may not have been able to ask in the past that have to do with the Bible, we present them to Brad. Today's question is actually a follow-up to a video we did about the nature of being homosexual, whether or not it's something you can be born with. In that video, Brad said that, yeah, it's certainly possible, but it's not necessarily right. Well, then that begs the question, Brad, if it's natural to be homosexual, or it's possibly natural to be homosexual, and yet still not right to do it, what's a person who has homosexual temptations to do if he wants to still honor God?
Okay. That's a great question. I'm glad we followed up with this. Just to remind you, what I understand from this book, from Romans chapter 1, from 1 Corinthians 6, and other places throughout the Bible, is that God's will is that people not engage in same-sex relationships.
And that goes for 2 women, 2 men, whatever.
Right, whatever the sex you are, you're not to be with that sex sexually.
Right.
And you can go back and watch that previous video. But I don't want to argue. Can I be born gay?
Right.
Fine, I'll grant you the subject.
Okay.
But the Scripture says you shouldn't act on that urge, just as I should not act on my urge as a heterosexual to have sex with women who are not my wife.
Right.
It's natural to me. I'm not supposed to do it. But the bigger question that's not addressed is, well, what about that person who's not attracted to the opposite sex, doesn't want to be married to them, doesn't want to have a sexual relationship with them? Are they just doomed to a life of loneliness? Well, that's a completely different subject. Companionship and sexuality are not the same thing. So, God said in the beginning, it's not good for man to be alone. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to have a sexual relationship with the opposite sex. Certainly not with the same sex. So what are they supposed to do? Well, I think the church has really missed this part here. Our culture, being so sexually charged, says you got to pick.
Right.
You've got to be heterosexual or homosexual. You've got to have sex with somebody.
If you don't pick women, they assume you're gay anyway.
Absolutely. So you've got to pick, and you got to go for it. You've got to engage sexually. Well, I don't find that to be a biblical stand at all. So my advice to the church, and what I hope the church begins to embrace more, is to say there's a third option. Okay, when it comes to companionship, you don't have to be heterosexual. You shouldn't live out a homosexual lifestyle, but that third option is companionship that is non-sexual.
Right.
Okay, so that you don't have to be alone. Men who are not attracted to women and don't want to be married to them shouldn't marry them, but they don't have to be homosexual with other men. They can live lives of companionship with other men in a non-sexual relationship. They can do that, just like Paul. I mean, when we see him throughout the book of Acts, throughout his letters, he's always living with somebody.
Right.
He's always got men traveling with him throughout his life on mission together. And I think if you were to ask them, they'd say, well, sure, we're roommates. I mean, we live life together,
right,
but we're certainly not living it in a sexual manner. And if the church can recapture that to begin to encourage people, you don't have to pick.
Right.
You don't have to pick heterosexual, homosexual. You can pick non-sexual. So the Scripture refers to those people in Corinthians as eunuchs. Mm-hmm. In fact, he even refers that some are self-made eunuchs.
Okay.
There are people, I don't think you have to actually cut yourself.
Don't do that.
There are people who actually decide, I am not attracted, and therefore I am not going to be attracted to either sex. I'm going to live my life out. However, in companionship, but without a sexual relationship.
That's the way Jesus lived. I didn't even think about it before.
There you go.
We're supposed to be following his life patterns anyway. Jesus never got married. I don't care what that movie said. And he still enjoyed companionship with many people
Yeah.
of both sexes in a holy way.
In fact, I've taught with people in my lifetime about this subject to say, is it that you are so driven you want to have sex with someone of the same sex, or is it that you are lonely? And so often I hear the question, it's not about the sex for me. I don't want to be lonely.
Right.
And it would be great if we could recapture and begin to build communities and begin to encourage people and disciple people to be able to live with one another in community without a sexual relationship.
All right, that was this discussion is actually building, and it's really good that we're doing it. If you think that we may have missed a point, because we know this is not exhaustive, please email me, john@onesoma.net, or if you have a YouTube account, you can also comment on this video. But we're going to go ahead and explore this some more the next time. In fact, I have a question about what this means about the Catholic Church. And the way they handle the priesthood. Anyway.